So the LeetCode we're going to be looking at today is LeetCode number 84, which is the largest rectangle in a histogram. So um, a histogram essentially is a data representation where the quantity of items over a certain interval are represented in a graph or a bar chart like form. So for example, if you were to draw a histogram of rainfall over the last 7 days, the height of the bars, they look like bar graphs, but they're not, because the height of the bars would be the amount of rainfall for each day, and the interval would be the days. So for Monday, you'd have this amount of rain, Tuesday, this amount. And by the end of the week, if you were to collect the total area of all the graphs that you have drawn, that would be the total amount of rainfall for that week. Does that make sense? That's cool, right? So in this case, what we're being told is we have an array of integers, heights representing the histogram's bar height, where the width of each bar is 1. Can you see my screen? Do I need to increase the font? No one has complained, so we'll continue. So the interval is 1, so the width of each bar is 1, okay? So each interval is of size width 1, and the heights is a standard array of integers, okay, for illustration here. And our task is to determine the area, the largest rectangle in the histogram. So in this case, the example given, this is the arrays, so this is the heights shown here, and the output is 10. 10 being that of all the rectangles in this one, the one that has the maximum area is when you go up to height 5 and you go from 5 to 6 at the same height of 5. So from this point to this point will give you this 2, and this 2 times 5 will give you 10. So the response is 10. Okay, that's cool, right? And the same thing for this one. You have a 2 and a 4, so you just get 2 and you extend it as far forward as you can. So the height 2 extend forward will give you 2 times 2, which is 4, and that is the response that you're supposed to send back. So let's examine this. Let's take this array. Let's put it in here. Just zoom in a little bit. So using this array, if we were to illustrate it, it would be, let's say that is a 2. And if that is a 2, then that would be a 1. And then we have a 5, goes that much. And is much bigger. Assume the intervals are equal size. And we have another 2, which is somewhere here. And finally a 3. So that is our 3. Okay, so if we were to determine the maximum height, the maximum rectangle, we would first need to determine all the possible areas that can be derived from these rectangles. So if we were to take all of these, so let's see how many rectangles we can make from this. So we can put it there, put it there, put another one there, put another one there, and let's see how many rectangles we can make. Okay, so the first one would be obviously this, right? That's 1. Okay, we can make another one, but that's not big, so let's make another one. So let's say we just take this and we extend it all the way height 1 across the entire width of the array. Let's make another one that looks big, which is possibly this one, because this is a big number. We can make another one using, let's make that blue. We can make another one using these two. Maybe that's a big one, I don't know. We have not yet determined how big it is. And there's also the possibility that this one that goes up could be much bigger than everyone else, so we don't know so far. So this could be potentially the largest figure out of all of these. So essentially what we should be able to do algorithmically is to determine which of all of these is the largest from this figure that we're given. So for example, this one would be of height 1 and it would be width 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this one would be 6. This one was a 5, so that would be 5 times 2, which is 10. This is a 2 times 2, which is 4. And this is a 6 by 1, which is another 6. And there's many more that we can derive. So anyone see a possible way in which we can get all these possible rectangles from the structure? Okay, here's someone.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
I think from the diagram you are drawing here,
Sean,
it
yes.
means we can get a rectangle if we start from a particular number and the next one is higher than where we started from. Like when we started from 5, okay, 6 is higher than 5. We try
Okay,
to
so
look
you
for
mean
another
this
one.
one.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we, at
And
the
then you
end,
try to move on. Yeah, we
we
try to
get
extend.
the total. Oh, so at the end we have only 2, so we multiply it by 2. So let's say
Yeah,
when we are in 3, we look for other numbers in the array that are more than 3. So I think, I
exactly.
don't know, is it possible for us to move these 3 close to 5 and 6 so that we can have like 3 rectangles?
This 3, yeah,
So that at the end of the day, we now have like 3.
like
Uh,
that. You keep going. I can hear you.
yeah.
I still hear you.
So like from what I'm seeing here, sorry, who is speaking?
Mhm.
Someone wants to talk.
Is a oh wow. Mm, okay.
Oh,
Is
okay.
it muted for everyone or just me? Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Um, I don't know if I just muted for myself. Yeah, it's a tiny. Could you please check your mic? Okay, so John, continue.
Okay, like from what I'm seeing, just like I said earlier, so we try to get the numbers in the array that are more than the particular one that we are taking. Let's say we are taking 2, for instance. So we have
Okay.
1 is less
Yeah.
than 2. We won't consider 1. So we'll move to 5. So 5 is more than 2. So maybe we have a counter that will now increment once we have encountered 2. Sorry, we encounter 5 that is more than 2. We have increment. So we move to 6. If 6 is more than 2, sorry, yeah, so
But
we increment again.
you realize that we can't make a rectangle from 2 going after 1
Oh,
because
okay,
there's a
yeah,
gap.
yeah, yeah, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So anyone else wanna give it a shot, or you have an improvement based on the new information?
Good evening.
Yeah. Hello. This is
Okay, yes.
Justin.
So, yes, just looking at the problem, I think, okay, my thought process is not complete, but let me share what I've put together so far. So, I think based on the array, we'll be receiving numeric values, integer values. So, what we can do is we can start from, okay, we can have two variables for length and breadth, and
Okay.
we can start from the beginning of the array. So, using this array as an example, we'll take 2 as the beginning of the array, and we can say that
Okay.
if the next number, so assuming 1 was greater than 2, then we can now increment the breadth value. So this first
Okay,
value
so
2 would be our length.
okay, so assuming the next, you're saying assuming the next
Yes,
value is greater, we can increment, right?
yes, we can increment the breadth value. And then
Okay,
when we get to the point where the next value, that's we're iterating through the array, and when we get to the point where the value we encounter is less than the previous value, we then multiply the length and breadth that we've gotten to that point and store it in uh and we store it in another variable, and then we can do the same for each element of the array till we find the greatest.
okay, so how are we going to do this? How do you have an idea algorithmically what we're gonna use, what we're gonna
Okay, so we can say we have three variables: length, breadth,
okay,
and area. And
okay, yeah,
yes, and then when we start with the first element of the array. So we take two. So
okay,
two would be the length or the height
yeah,
in this
okay,
case. Two would be our height, and then we check. So now we are going through the array. So we iterate through the array and we check if the next element is greater than or less than two. So two would
okay,
be
so in
our
this case
height
it is
and our
not,
breadth. Yes, yes. In this
so
case, it
yeah,
is
two
not.
will,
So we
yeah,
multiply two by one. So our breadth, the default value for our breadth variable would be one.
okay, so
Yes,
2x1, that gives us 2, okay,
exactly.
so that will be our
Yes, so
area,
that would be our area. Yes. Now we move to
okay,
the next element, which is one.
so what we
We move
just,
to the next element
okay,
of the array, which is one.
which is,
Now, in this case, based on what we are seeing, we're not just going to go uh, forward. We also have to consider what is before the current element. So
yeah,
exactly. So we have to check if that value is greater than the current element, which in this case it is. So we increment our breadth value to 2.
okay, so
So
we
our
walk
breadth value
this
will be
way,
2.
we increment,
Yes.
okay, so first we also check, so just let's check if the previous value is greater than the current, okay,
Yes.
so in this case
So
current b
it is
would, yeah, so it will, so b in this case is
would
okay, and then so now that we have the left, what do we do now? We now continue stretching it to the right.
exactly we compare
No,
with the rest
we
of the
do,
values in the array, and
okay,
as far as the value we get is greater than the, let's say, the pivot element now or our current element, we would increment the breadth value.
okay, so for this one we will have determined the b, and we will also have determined the height to be 1, right? So for it
One.
should be actually
Yes.
1, yeah, okay, so anyone see any reason why that logic would not work, or anyone have an improvement? I mean, I don't see any problem with it. Does anyone see a problem with it?
What would happen if one of the elements had like a height of 0?
So if in that case, if the next one was a 0, then simply this would check if uh, the next element is greater than it, and it would stop at that point and compute the length times width, like in this case, in which case it is not that. So our current B would be the entire length. So 1, 2, 3. So we've gone back 1, 1, and then we continued forward. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we check the next one. The next one is less, so we stop. So B is 6, and height, we call it height. We call it L will be 1. We compute L and B, and we get 6. So it was still as our answer. And we could return that. Anyone see any issue? So we are comfortable. Okay, so now maybe can I propose an optimization for that? Because we realize that in order to compute for this one, we stood on 2, we checked all the next for the next lesser element, and we were able to see that it is the next one, and we computed 2 and we saved it. For 1, we had to go to the back, check, go to the front, check, and and then we would also have to do the same thing for the next one, which is the 5. We would have to check if there's any value to the previous, which is not luckily for us in this case. And then we would have to check again, going forward as far forward as we can. When we get here, we stop. And this will be for 5. We do the same thing for 6. 6, we try to go back, there's nothing. We try to go forward, there's nothing. So 6 will be just that. We go to the next. You realize we're making a lot of repetitive movement going back. See, now we go back again, and then now we go forward again for this. So assuming we have, let's even assume all of these are the same height and they are of this size. Worst case, length is 10 raised to 5. So 10, whatever number that is, 100,000. So assuming we have an array of size 100,000, for each element in that 100,000 size array, we would still have to make each and every computation to determine the maximum area for each and every element, right? So that will give us a worst case of n squared, okay? But what if uh, instead of just walking the stack and checking back and forth, what if we could instead take this value, this is a 2, and we store it in a data structure called a stack, okay? So we have a stack and we have the current height. So the current height at this point of size 2 is, so it begins at, let's say, index 0. We store the index of that value. And then we start going forward. We stretch it forward and we try to access the next. We see that the next one is less than 2. So what do? We compute the data for everything that is inside our stack, right? So the index at our stack is index 0. So the height at index 0 from our array is 2. So height of the latest, wow, what happened there? Okay, so the height at this current position will be the height of the element that is on top of the stack. Okay, and the width would simply be the current index. So we are trying to move forward by 1, and we are seeing that this one is less. So the index, the width, which is the breadth that you were just calling width, just width would be the current index, minus the starting position, which is the one we stored. Yeah, so current index minus our starting position, which was the value that we stored in the stack. And because we have gone extra 1, we will need to reduce it by 1 so that we only get the dimensions of the current element. Does that make sense? So we reduce it so that we only capture that. So that will be that. And we do -1, and that will be the width. So same logic, but only thing is we're using a data structure to keep the values as they increment. So the keyword here is going to be make sure that you're only adding elements to the stack as long as they are incrementing, okay? So that we don't need to make that backward movement again to check if there's anything behind it that is lesser than it. So once we do that, we remove this item from the stack, which is currently greater. So stack.pop, we should probably do this a bit earlier. So let's just pop as we begin so that we don't have to think about it again. And we continue. We append the next item. Okay. So now we have removed that one. We take our beautiful stack and we start it again, and we pop the index of this one. So index will be 1. And then we start moving forward. So we move forward by 1. Is it great? Is it lesser than the current value in the stack? Well, it is not. So what do? We simply add this index to the stack. We continue. Is it? And our current latest element will be that one. Okay. So we continue adding to the stack. We go again to the next one. The latest element is now of height 6, and we can continue adding it to the stack. So we add 6 to the index of position of height 6 to the stack. We continue to the next one. Oof, our condition has been breached. So what do? Same thing we did for the first one. We check the height of this, because we pop this latest item from the stack. So the latest item on the stack was this 6. Okay. I hope we're together. So the latest item in the stack is this 6. So if we pop it, we will have its index. So the index that we will pop will be the one for 6, which is the stack. Okay, so how can we get the dimension, the values that we need to compute everything we need for this 6, because it has breached our condition? So the first thing is we need to know its width. Now we can determine, because once we have removed the 6, the next previous element from our stack will be the 5. So removing that 6 has allowed us to get the previous peak from the back. Does that make sense? So the previous lesser element is now the last item to be added to the stack. So our width is gonna be the current index minus the index that was last stored in the stack. So that will be stack -1 and -1, because we have moved, the current index will be one step forward. Okay. So we're still standing here. So this is where we have reached. So again, we check, is this one lesser than the current index? Is it? Yes, it is. So same thing. We do the same thing and we remove this. Oh, sorry, we need to compute this to see. And height is obviously the height at index, which is the value that we removed from the stack, which is this 6. So this will give us the index height. Okay, so now we check again. Is 5 greater than the current position? We see that it is. So also 5 needs to get popped. Same thing, we're going to get the height of 5 as the height at the current, sorry, yeah, so this is the heights array. And the previous element is going to be the one that remains in the stack, which is this one. So what is the index of this one? The index of this one is the last element that is left in the stack. So stack -1. And the width is the current index, which is the one we, hello? So current index minus the previous one, which is gonna give us the height and the width of the 5 rectangle. Does that make any sense? I hope you're together. And finally, we can compute for 5, and then we can now check for the last item left in the stack, which is the 1. Is 1 less than the one we are about to add? No. So in that case, we can assume that 1 is free to continue while we add this new height to the stack, which will begin from this point. So this one will continue until we get to the end. And when we get to the end, we are still gonna have a height 1, a height 2, and a height 3 left in the stack. So what are we going to do in that case? So we could simply pop the stack, right? We could simply clean out the stack and collect everything that we need to compute all of these. Or best case, alternatively, if there was a 0 element at the bottom here, if there was a 0 element at the end of the stack, we would be so happy because it would give us a reason to fall into this loop again to just clean out the elements one by one. So pop this one, pop that one, and pop this overall remaining 0 from where it started all the way to the end of the stack. Does that make sense? Any questions? We're together? Okay, so let's discuss what we just said. Pseudocode, we just jump into the code.
Can we write a pseudocode please so that I would get it a little bit clearly?
Okay, so we start by
I
having
actually
a
joined
height
late,
that is,
so I don't even.
so we have a heights array. Oh, sorry, I'll just try to re-explain it for anyone who may have joined late. So we have a heights array as input, and what we're trying to do is to determine the largest histogram that can be determined from the contained rectangles within that figure that is made out of the heights and the indexes of these heights. So the rectangles. So all of these are rectangles, and we want to make the biggest rectangle using the arrays given to us. Okay, so we have a heights array as input, and what we want to do is to determine the max area. Okay, let's call that the max area. So we can safely say that it will not be less than 0. So you can't have area less than 0 because you can't have length or width less than 0. So the next thing we're going to do is to initialize a stack, which is empty. Okay. And then we're going to loop through each and every element in the stack, in the array. Okay. As we loop through the elements, we are adding the elements, let's say the index. of the elements to the stack. However, we're not just appending. As we append, we are checking a condition, the condition being that do not add anything to the stack if, sorry, let me just get rid of this. Do not add anything to the stack if it is less than the last item added to the stack, okay? So if the height of the next element is less than what you just added, the last item in the stack, remove until you get to an element that is lesser than or equal to the one that is about to be appended, okay? So let's, why isn't this? Okay. Select your cell. Okay, yes, so you go here as well. Okay, so append elements to the stack, and then you check that you do not add an element that is less. So safely, obviously. So while if there's a stack already existing, so we can say the while stack and the height of so the last element to the, let's say latest element in the stack is greater than the one to be added. Then what do you do? So you compute. So you obviously you pop the items from the stack. Let's say element from the stack and compute max area using the popped element, and then compute the area using, and then you compare the area of the one you just got with max area. So this will tell you whether the one that you just popped is greater than what you have so far as your max area. So you're keeping that. So if you have your 2 currently as your max area, if you go to the next one, okay, it was breached. What is the max area? The area of this one is 2 by 1, so that's 2. Max area is 1. So the whoever is bigger, which is 2 in this case, is going to be our new max area. Remove that, move to the next one, continue until you get, okay, let's check, we get up to here. So now we are at 6. So we compute 6 by 1. 6 by 1 is going to give us a value. Compare 6 by 1 in the max area. 6 is larger, so that will be our new max area. And we're going to continue like that until we get to the end of the stack where some values will be left in the stack, right? So 1 will be left, this 2 will be left, and this 3 will be left because there's nothing greater than them. So potentially we could just loop through the stack and pop the elements, or we could take this initial array and give us a miracle value, one miracle, which is we're going to assume the array ends in a 0, so that when we get to the end, we're going to fall back into this loop and we're going to have to compute this one, and this one, which saves us the extra loop to just clean out the stack, because we'll just be doing it within the same block of code. So far so good. People are quiet. Are you lost? Confused? What will happen? Can we try it? Okay, so let's try our pseudocode here. Okay, so we have our max area, which is 0. We have our stack, which is that. And so here we're gonna create a small miracle where our height ends in 0 by taking the input array and appending a 0 at the end, just so we'll be able to clean up. And then next step is to loop through each element of the array. So for I, h in array the heights array. Yeah, so this is the next line. So while stack and height of the last element in the stack, so heights, then the last one is going to be stack minus 1 is greater than the current position. So that will be heights. Sorry, it's actually h. Okay. Then all of this will be pop. So we pop. So before we pop, we just want to okay.
Mother.
So we pop from the stack.
So we pop from the stack.
So let's just call it ideas. We go to stack dot and our height is gonna be okay. Someone check that. Nadu, please your mic heights for the index. We collect our height, and now we need our width. Width is going to be from our current position, which is I. We subtract the height of the last element, and we consider the fact that we are 1 extra due to the iteration through, because that's the one we are comparing with at the moment. So that's our I, and we compute the area. So we can do this in one line. So compare the area, we'll simply say max area will be max area and height x width. Finally, can append the current index to the stack. So that's a stack I, and we return. Is there an indent issue somewhere? Here we need an indent. And finally, we can return our max area. Can we try this? Any questions before we try it? I hope I've not muted everyone. Okay, so let's see what happens. Oh, okay. Valid syntax, max Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. So we do need to check if. So that will be if else. So we did pop the last element from the stack, so there's a possibility the stack could be non-existent when we are trying to access the latest element. Okay. Looks decent. Hopefully it'll patch. Okay, so
Hello? Hello?
this is Justin, yeah.
Justin. Yes. So, sorry, I have a question. I didn't quite get the with part. I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. How that expression evaluates to the actual wish that we need. Can you like just brush up that area a bit?
Yeah, okay, so we're saying the width is, before we check the width, we pop, right?
Your voice is quite low.
Mine, okay. So before we compute the width, the first thing we do is we pop from the current stack. So let's say the stack has gotten to, let's just remove this. So up to that point, let's say we have been computing the, so that will be index 0, index 1, index 2, and index 3. And index 3. And what we want to do is go through the loop. Okay, so obviously this is increasing. So far so good. So 1 will get added to the stack. So stack contains 1. Stack now contains 1. We go again. Sorry, stack contains 0. We go again. Stack contains this one, which is greater, so no problem. We add index 1. We go to the next. We have 2, so now we add at index 2. And now we go to the next one. So the stack contains 2 as the latest index, but our iterator, this one for I in enumerate heights, is still increasing. So now it is at 3, right? So iter is 3, okay? So now 3 is the current index that is being compared to the last element in the stack. So in order to get the index of the last item in the stack, we will just pop it from the stack. So we will remove the 2 from the stack. The only thing being in the stack is 0 and 1, okay? So this is being removed from the stack, okay? So now we're saying the width is I. So I is the iterator, which is, this is iter. So this is what this value is. So it is 3, right? And we are saying minus the last item in the stack, which is, in this case, you see what it is? It's a 1, right? So the index in the stack is 1. So if we do 3 minus 1, what is that? That is the measurement from this position to this position, right? But we are only interested in this much. So if that makes sense. No, we're getting from we need to put these slightly better so that it becomes clearer. Okay, so it's basically like at the breakpoint, right? So if we want to get width of this one, it will be, so the iterator is at 3, right? It's at this point, and it's looking back that way, okay? And because all of these are of width 1, which is what is a given based on the question, we have been told explicitly that all of them are of width 1, we can safely assume that if we are here at the position 3, and we are trying to look back, we will be collecting the measurement from this 3 all the way to this one, right? But we are only interested in the width of this element, okay? So we're gonna do the current iterator point minus the last item in this index of the last item in the stack, which is 1, and then we remove 1 to only get the width of the one that is being processed, which is the one, basically you're removing the extra from the, what's it called, from the width, right? So we're trying to collect only the width of the element, okay? And that will give us -1, which is 1, right? So the width will be 1. Does that help?
I think I didn't get you. I think,
Pardon?
why do we need to to subtract iterator minus the top element of
Actually,
the stack? How does
actually,
this help?
it's more like this, because this loop will be going an extra 1. The current that is being compared is the position at here and where this thing began, okay? So we want to make sure that we remove this extra step that we took to compare. So we need to be standing at this point to make the comparison, to see whether this one is greater than or equal. So we can't stand here and go next. We need to be standing here and then looking back. But if you're standing here and looking back, then we have the extra width of this element, which is the next one. So if we reduce by that size, I hope this makes clearer. That one was a bit weird. If we remove the width of the current element where we're standing on, then we can accurately get this one. Is that better?
Um, I don't know. Uh, I think,
Maybe you can just give it a go, try to
yeah,
run through the code, see if it makes,
yeah.
okay. But I hope it's clear on what anything else above that is clear. Oh, and then the final part is to simply check if the stack is actually exists. Because when we pop this one, then the stack essentially does not exist. So our measurement
Yeah.
will be from
I
the
think
beginning to,
I don't understand how do you calculate the area, the equation for the width. I don't understand it.
okay. So as we move, let me try again. So we are moving from position, from index to index to index to index, okay?
Yeah,
And all of these are of a specific interval, size 1, right?
yeah.
So if we move from this one to this one, the interval from this one to this one is
One.
1. Yeah,
Yeah,
from this one to this one is 1. This one to this
yeah.
one is 1. So in a good day, we would simply be able to check from here to here, from where it begins to where it ends, right? Here to here. But the way we have set up our algorithm is algorithm needs to first move to the next element in order to determine whether this one is lesser or greater than the previous one, right?
Yeah.
So we'll always have this extra value in our measurement, right? We're simply correcting for. So in order to do that, we first get the index of the last element, which is this position, which is stack, which is the one left in the stack. And then our iterator, which is the one that is looping, is this one. So in order to determine the width of this particular one, we need to be able to get the width from where it begins to where it ends. So it is 2 minus 3 minus 2, that is. If we were to do it without this minus 1, it will give us an error of always extra, which does not exist because this only ends here.
Yeah, but you pop an element first and then look at the top of
Yeah,
the stack after popping the element, right?
yeah.
Why?
So we need to keep, what we're trying to do is to maintain, I should have said earlier, what we're trying to do is maintain a stack that is in order of increasing heights, right?
Yeah. I
As,
I understand monotonic stack, right?
yeah, exactly. So monotonic stack. So in order to maintain that property of monotonicity is we need to make sure that we're only adding values that are greater than the previous one. So in this case, when we encounter it, then we need to remove this one and compute its area, right? So that we don't miss out on any area that could be greater. So we need to compute the area of this one.
Yeah.
So we pop it from the stack and we compute its area using the dimensions of the current position and the previous position before it, the previous less height that was lesser than it. In which case it is this one. So currently we are standing here and here. Because we have popped this one, we need to compute its area. So that's what we will do. And if we pop this one as well, essentially we will be computing area from this position to this position for height 5. So we don't need to move this one. We just need to keep moving back until we get to
Yeah.
the last element that is lesser. So we'll pop this one as well, compute its area until we get to this one. So and then this satisfies our condition. So now we can safely add this
The new
2 to
index
the
to the
stack.
stack, right?
Yeah, and keep moving.
Yeah. I think now I
Okay, so that
understand.
we're good now. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone is happy. Okay, so remember the feedback form is in the chat, so you can just go through it. Make sure you fill in your details so that you can get your community fellowship points for attending these programs. And yeah, make sure you contribute and feel free to request to make a next presentation. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor.
Mm,
And the code of this will be in the GitHub repo that we made, or that Abdullah had made. So if anybody wants to check it out, it will be there. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for attending. I'll see you guys on the next one.